morning. Is everybody in the room? Are we all ready to go? Good-o. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to the 8th Annual G21 Stakeholder Forum. My name is Lee McCluskey, and it's my very great pleasure to be your MC for today's event. To get us underway, though, today we would like to welcome Wathaurong woman Corrina Eccles and Anthony Hume for a traditional welcome to country.
Wadawurrung Maruk. In Wadawurrung language, I say Wadawurrung spirit. May we acknowledge the first mother tongue of this land, the Wadawurrung spirit. May we acknowledge the first footsteps of this land, the Wadawurrung spirit. May we acknowledge the first peoples to care for this land, country, water, all things living and each other. The spirit of the Wadawurrung people, our ancestors, elders and family. I'd like to acknowledge Uncle Norm and Melinda standing alongside me. We are direct descendants of the only bloodline that survived what took place on this beautiful country, Wadawurrung country. We stand here and continue to speak the mother tongue of this land. I'd like to acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that are gathered here today and say Yatni to Anthony Hume alongside us today. I'd now like to welcome you all with the first language of this land, the mother tongue of our Mother Earth, and the Wadawurrung people. Muumbengarik, Kinkin Bill, Wedigaranguli, Wadawurrung, Nalinguik, Kimbani, Wadawurrung Ja, Bunini Duluma Bengadakba, Gayupian Gulma, Muradop Makburi. In Wadawurrung language I say, from my ancestors, elders, family, we welcome you all here on Wadawurrung country. Let us all come together, embrace each other and gather in peace. Karingalabil, bonjour, Bangarake Yupiang, Guma Wadaranja, Bangarake Yupiang, Guma Wadaranja, Bangarake Yupiang, Guma Wadaranja, Bangarake Yupiang, Guma Wadaranja, Kimbani, Kimbani, Kimbani.
very warm thank you to Corrina and Anthony for that traditional welcome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, every year this forum attracts a stellar field of speakers, and this year is no different as we reflect on some of our region's achievements, challenges, and importantly, the opportunities for economic growth and jobs. Today, we are delighted that we will be joined by Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews, G21 Chair Bill Mithen and CEO Elaine Carbines, Deakin University Vice-Chancellor Professor Iain Martin, Christine Couzens MP, Victorian Treaty Advancement Commissioner Jill Gallagher, Barwon Water Chair Joe Plummer, who'll be hosting a fabulous discussion about water for our future, Chief Executive of the Eden Project International David Harland, and I don't know if you've seen the Addy this morning, very exciting news, and he'll be elaborating on that for us, Geelong Port CEO Brett Winter, Infrastructure Victoria Project Director Alyssa McNamara, and a bit later in the day I'll be chairing a panel discussion exploring the challenges of waste and resource recovery in our region. And of course our keynote speaker today, senior journalist and fabulous host of RN Drive, Patricia Cavalis. Well, to everyone who has joined us for today's forum, as I said, a very warm welcome to you all. Today is, as always, a very tight agenda, and my job, which is not always easy, is to do my best to keep us all on time. So if I happen to give one of our speakers a polite nod during the proceedings, you will know that time is getting away. I'm not trying to be a rude cow, I'm just trying to keep everybody on track. So I beg your indulgence with that little bit of housekeeping. Now, today's event would not be possible without our very generous sponsors, and we thank them sincerely for the support of this year's forum. Our silver sponsors are Regional Development Australia, we welcome Bruce Anson, the Times News Group, and welcome Warwick Brown. Our bronze sponsors, Geelong Port and Brett Winter, Deakin University with Michael Mangos, G-Force Employment Solutions, Rob Birch. And also we're delighted to welcome our supporting sponsors, the Salary Packaging people, Bruce Francis, Telstra, Rowan Baker, and West Wind Energy, Jeff Adams. So thank you to you all for your support. A little more housekeeping. This is clearly a non-smoking venue. The conveniences are located outside the main auditorium doors where we had a cuppa round to your right. And in the highly unlikely event of an emergency, please follow the instructions of the conference centre staff. We'd ask you to turn your mobile phones to silent, but do feel free to tweet. The Twitter hashtag for the event, and we would encourage you to tweet or to follow other tweets, is, gee, wild and crazy, hashtag G21 Forum. Not hard to remember. Now, to formally open the day, would you please make welcome the Chair of G21, the Geelong Region Alliance, Bill Mithen.
Thanks, Lee. I think we're ahead of time. Might mean I've got a bit extra to go, do I, before you start being a rude cow? No, not really. So thanks, everyone. It's nice to have so many people here. I think we've got pretty close to 300, which is once again a sellout and an amazing amount of people, and I think just sort of underscores why this forum has become more and more important each and every year that it's been run. Can I just thank Corrina and Anthony as well, and Uncle Norm and Melinda for their opening. I think it's great the way we start with a welcome to country, and their welcomes to country are always really poignant, I think, and memorable and meaningful and quite purposeful, and I think starting such a forum like that is really important. So I'd like to thank them for what they have brought to us this morning. In doing that, I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we gather. And before I do that, I do this in not just a perfunctory way, in not just a way that is rote learn off the top of my head. I do it with the knowledge that this land, this coast, this place that you can't quite see because of the curtains, would have been and absolutely must have been an incredibly important place for our First Nations people. And I do it knowing that we now are incredibly lucky to be able to share this land with our First Nations people, particularly this coast that we now hold quite, so dear to us. I also do it with the knowledge that reconciliation is still one of the most significant issues facing our country. And so with all of that knowledge, I would like to thank and acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we gather, and they of course are the Wadawurrung people, who are members of the Kulin Nation. And on behalf of everyone, I'd like to pay our respects to all elders past and present. If I can just welcome a few people and acknowledge a few people. Of course, the Premier of Victoria is going to be here later this morning, Daniel Andrews. He'll be speaking just after morning tea, and it's terrific to have him with us again. If I could also acknowledge Lisa Neville, Minister for Police and the Minister for Water, as well as, of course, the Member for Bellarine. Christine Couzens, the Member for Geelong, Andy Medic, the Member for Western Victoria, and also Commissioner Jill Gallagher, who's going to be speaking to us shortly, and she, of course, is the Victorian Treaty Advancement Commissioner. So welcome to all of you. We have all of the G21 mayors with us today, which is nice to have all 5. So from Surf Coast Shire, Councillor Rose Hodge, City of Greater Geelong, Bruce Harwood, Owen Sharkey from the Golden Plains Shire, Bob Merriman from Borough of Queenscliff, and Councillor Jason Schramm from Colac Otway Shire. Welcome to all of you, and nice to have you here and as mayors, but also as board members of G21, and thanks for your contribution as a board member to G21 and the support that you've given the organisation and to me and Elaine over the last 12 months. We also got a number of councillors from G21 councils here. So councillors from City of Greater Geelong, councillors Anthony Aiken, Peter Murray and Jim Mason. From Surf Coast Shire, councillors David Bell, Martin Duke and Margot Smith. From Colac Otway Shire, councillors Brian Crook and Chris Potter. And from the Borough of Queenscliff, councillors Ross Eccles and Susan Salter. So welcome to all of you as well. I'd like to acknowledge all of the G21 board members. I'm not going to go through all of them. There's 15 of them in total. I've already done 5. I'm 6, so there you go. There's another 9. But I'd like to thank them for all of the work they do. It's actually a reasonably considerable amount of work that goes into being a board member. It's a voluntary role, but it is a considerable contribution, not just to the organisation, but I think to the region in general. And they all do it with a great deal of passion and commitment, and certainly have offered me a lot of support over the last 12 months. So I'd like to thank all of them for their contributions. In particular, if I could, I'd just like to make mention of one board member, in fact, no longer a board member as of a month or 2 ago, Lenny Jenner. So Lenny, as many of you will know, is the CEO of the Borough of Queenscliff, is about to leave that position next month. But as the CEO of the Borough of Queenscliff, he's been a board member of G21 for 11 years. Now, I think, Elaine, I'm right in saying G21's 18 years old. So 11 years of that 18, Lenny's been on the board and contributing. And that's a really significant contribution to the organisation and the region. And I'd like to particularly acknowledge his involvement and role that he played in the development of the GROW initiative and particularly its predecessor, which is the Addressing Disadvantage Task Force, which Lenny had a significant role on. So I'd like to really thank him for that contribution, because it's an important contribution, and I reckon he might deserve a round of applause. To our guest speakers, all of our guest speakers, Lee's already been through them, but if I could mention just a couple, a big welcome to Professor Iain Martin, the new Vice-Chancellor of Deakin University. Great to have you here with us. And I guess you're starting to understand how dearly we hold Deakin University. Sorry about that for you. But it's nice to have you here, and I think speaking shortly. And of course, to our keynote speaker, Patricia Carvelis, I suspect half the reason why there's 300 people in the room is the fact that she's speaking. So welcome to her. There's a range of other people in the room, business and community leaders, CEOs. I feel like I've mentioned quite a few. There might be a few I've missed, but welcome to all of you. It's a great room to be a part of. It's a room full of knowledge and understanding of our region, full of advocacy for our region and passion for the region. So it's a really nice room to be a part of, and I feel lucky to be a part of that. So welcome to everyone. Couple of thank yous. Thanks to our sponsors. We can't put this on without our sponsors. Lee's gone through those, so thank you to all of the sponsors. Thanks to Lee again, I think year number 5 or 6 of hosting, and does a fantastic job in hosting and emceeing the forum, so thank you. And my final acknowledgement and thank you is to the team of G21. So it's a small team, but it does complete a really large body of work each and every year. And this year, the last 12 months, has been an incredible body of work when you consider that we've had a state election and a federal election. And there's a lot of advocacy that goes into those state and federal elections. And the only way we're able to do that advocacy is for a group of really expert, really talented group of people to go to produce the material that we're able to use to advocate to our politicians with, I must say, a huge amount of success that I know Elaine's going to talk about. So I'd really like to thank that group. I know Elaine will mention them individually later on the day. But the team at G21 do an incredible behind-the-scenes job, and so I'd like to thank them a lot. In particular, if I could just mention Nada Malinak, who puts on this show for us. She's the chief organiser, and it's not an easy thing to organise something like this. It's only part of her role, but it's a really important part, and she has done a fantastic job once again. So congratulations, Nada, once again on putting together a really great day. And last but certainly not least, to our CEO, Elaine Carbines. I think everyone will know in the room will know Elaine. We are incredibly fortunate to have, I've said this before, fortunate to have Elaine within our region. We're really fortunate to have her as the CEO of G21. Her skill and expertise in working through really complex issues and sort of making them simple for people to understand is a great asset to the region, and is evidenced by, I think, the success of the advocacy and the success of getting the investment that comes through. I think some of that success, a lot of that success, absolutely lays at the feet of Elaine. And so congratulations again, Elaine, on a fantastic year, and nice to have you here. So if I can, I'd just like to conflate a couple of issues today, being the two issues being the importance of G21 and the theme for this year's forum. So just might need to bear with me a little bit. We decided to take a little bit of a different tack to the G21 Stakeholder Forum this year. It's traditionally, as you would know, quite a political affair, with politicians coming and speaking, including Prime Ministers and Premiers, or those that would want to be Prime Ministers and Premiers, coming and speaking and outlining their visions for the region. The forum has sort of had this useful knack of being positioned quite close to an election often, which has meant that candidates have come along and wanted to speak to this group of people, a regional group of people, a regional group of leaders, but also the region in general, and get their message out. This year, of course, as I said, we're all electioned out, thank goodness. And we don't have an election actually in the foreseeable future, unless something happens that we don't know about. So despite that, though, we're delighted, of course, to have the Premier coming and speaking, and I think that just sort of underscores the importance of the forum and of G21, and I think it sort of highlights the esteem that the Premier and the government hold G21 in this forum, and I think it also shows the importance of this region to the government. However, with both of those federal and state elections over and done with and run and won, over the last 12 months, we felt there was an opportunity with the forum to do something different and provide a little bit of space and time to discuss and investigate one of the key challenges of the region, and in fact probably one of the key challenges of the country and possibly the planet. So this year the forum is centred around some of the environmental challenges facing our region. And while not all of the content is specifically directed at that theme, we'll definitely be hearing about some incredibly exciting and new ideas and projects that look at things like the remediation of the coal mine in Anglesey, the critical issue of water and water use and water sustainability in our region, as well as resource recovery and recycling. We really wanted to open up some discussion and provide a forum where ideas might sprout and information is disseminated. So it was in 2007 that then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd said that climate change is the greatest moral challenge of our generation. So it was a pretty clear statement, the greatest moral challenge of our generation. But the discourse since then has been totally incongruent with such a challenge. The environment now seems to me to be either a vote winner or a vote loser, something that someone maybe can blame on someone else, or someone else's problem to fix, not my or not our problem to fix, but somebody else needs to do something about that. I hope actually we would all agree that the greatest moral challenge of our generation would normally create a discourse of collaboration, partnership, energy, urgency, problem solving and innovation. But where I sit, from the cheap seats maybe, I'm pretty certain that hasn't been the case and that discourse hasn't been created. So what I guess we wanted to do at G21 was something that is almost inherent in the design and the nature of our organisation, and that is to provide a forum for discussion and ideas. And I guess in providing that forum, we're working as a region to attack some of the biggest challenges that we as a community face. And so why is G21 important? Well, I reckon it's important because of that, exactly that reason. It's important because together as a region, we're able to have more ideas, we achieve better scale, and we have a greater diversity of lenses through which to view these problems and develop the solutions. The kind of really simple, but I actually think quite elegant design of G21 is such that 5 local governments, all of different sizes, quite different sizes, all of different topographies, all of different demographies, utilise the attributes and qualities of each other and recognise that individually we don't do as good a job as we do collectively. And individually, others have different qualities that actually make us better as a whole, thereby working better as a region and as a whole than as an individual. I think we're really fortunate that G21 is recognised as best practice in regional collaboration by state and federal governments. And I know we hear that a little bit, that it's best practice and we're recognised. I'm going to tell just a very quick little story. It hit home to me very early in my days as a director at G21 on a trip to Canberra when we sat in a meeting with Anthony Albanese, and he had to lead the meeting, and it was sort of one of the first ones I had to lead, and I was reasonably nervous about it. And I sat there and said, hello Anthony, it's terrific to be here, and I had to explain what G21 was, and I started my spiel of saying it's 5 local government areas, and he said, you're kidding, aren't you? And I sort of stopped with a bit of a start and went, well, no, I'm not kidding. It is 5 local government areas. And he said, you don't think I know about G21? I know exactly about G21. I know all about G21. And it's easily one of the 3 best local regional collaborations, along with a couple of others in the country. So you can skip over your little preamble and just get to the point. So it really hit home that it did. So I skipped over and did get to the point, but it really did hit home how highly it's regarded. And I think, again, evidenced by the fact that the Premier is going to come and speak to us again today. So the region now works together as a system, as I've spoken before, which makes sense. It makes utter sense for it to work as a system and has yielded extraordinary results in terms of investment in our region. And I know Elaine's going to detail some of that later on. It makes so much sense to work together, much more sense than to work as individuals. So once again, I'm hoping that today will be the start of this region once again leading the way. The start of this region saying that we want to be good ancestors. We want to leave behind something that's better. And most importantly, it's the start of having a collaborative, engaged discourse that might identify new and innovative solutions that we'll be able to share, not only internally within our region, but also share externally with other regions around the country. So I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. I hope you're going to enjoy it. I'm sure you are. It is an incredibly good lineup that we've got today. And once again, I'd like to thank you all for being here. Thanks. Thanks, Lee.
Thank you, Bill. I've obviously got you scared. We're under time. Going well. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure now to introduce Professor Iain Martin, the new Vice-Chancellor of Deakin University, where he took over the reins on July the 1st, 2019. And you would have to argue with some very big shoes to fill. Professor Martin comes with fabulous credentials. He came to Deakin from the position of Vice-Chancellor of Anglia Ruskin University in the United Kingdom. Prior to that, he was Deputy Vice-Chancellor Academic at the University of New South Wales. Professor Martin spent a number of years at the University of Auckland with positions including Professor of Surgery, Dean of the Faculty of Medical and Health Science, and Deputy Vice-Chancellor with responsibility for external and strategic partnerships. Professor Martin grew up in the UK and attended the University of Leeds, where he completed his medical degree, doctorate and Master of Education. After graduation, he trained as a surgeon specialising in gastrointestinal and laparoscopic surgery, whilst holding clinical academic appointments. He's here today. We certainly welcome him to Geelong. He's here to tell us about Deakin's role in the future prosperity of G21. Please make him welcome.
Thank you very much indeed for the introduction. In opening, I too wish to acknowledge the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nations, the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathered today. And in making that acknowledgement, reflect on the fact that that relationship is probably at least 3,000 generations old, an intense bond with this land that those of us who come from far younger civilizations can only begin to understand. I also acknowledge all our extremely distinguished guests here today. Guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's absolutely fantastic to be here. Tomorrow, 1st of September, I start my 3rd month here as Vice-Chancellor. I'm not sure when you drop the prefix new, but it's probably after I've met everybody once. So I'm not new after today. I'm absolutely delighted to be here and share some thoughts on where we as a university might go in terms of our place, our purpose, and our people across the Geelong and G21 region. That relationship is clearly built on a long-standing social contract between our communities and our students, our university, and the government. The next stage in the evolution of Deakin, and how all Australian universities will continue to be, how do we build that relationship, and how do we make sure that the people that make up our communities really value and work with the university to add value back to those communities. Over the 45 years since we were founded as a university in 1974, Deakin has formed an integral bond with this region. And during the last decade, and particularly under the trusted leadership of my predecessor, Professor Jane Den Hollander, Deakin has helped the G21 region navigate significant industrial, social, economic, and technological change. G21's strategic pillars closely aligns with Deakin's teaching and research foci. This means that we're educating future generations of experts, thinkers, and leaders who can respond to each of your priority areas of development, including health and well-being, economic development, and education and training. What about the future direction of Deakin? Well, our current strategy, Live 2020, continues to serve the university and community well. We're now beginning to think about what the strategic priorities that will replace that strategy will be, to have a new plan that we'll implement from the tail end of next year that will reflect both our changing aspirations as a university, but particularly local, regional, and global economic opportunities, social opportunities, and cultural opportunities and challenges. In doing that, as a university, we're going to have to address the relationship that we have with you, our communities, and continue to build on that. We have to make sure that we recognise the imperative of education as a transformational enabler for the things that we want to achieve across those communities. We're faced with the opportunity and challenge of some very significant population shifts and demographic changes over that time. How do we work with you to address those? The world that we operate in is changing, our funding models are changing. We need to make sure that we influence and shape those changes so that we can deliver back to the communities we live in and serve. We need to make sure that we reflect the changing public expectations of Australia's university, particularly with respect to the underpinning social contract that underpins everything that we do as a large teaching and research intensive university. And importantly, how the research, innovation, and application that we carry out continues to support the social, cultural, and economic well-being of this region. Deakin is unique in Victoria because its campuses straddle distinct communities and environments, and in many ways our institution is a microcosm of the entire Australian higher education environment. Geelong and its 2 campuses is an exemplar of a regional city with businesses and industries that service markets from the local to the global and has the space to innovate and grow. Warrnambool's regional location means it's ideally suited to meet the multitude of opportunities and challenges faced by primary and secondary industries across our country. Burwood, with its major metro location, gives students and researchers the opportunity to examine and help solve the issues faced by increasing urbanisation and exposes the strengths of Deakin to a much broader community. And we shouldn't forget our cloud campus, our fastest growing area of delivery. We now have more students studying in the cloud than at Waterfront and Warm Ponds combined. We can't forget the place that Deakin sits in. Our unique, long coastal environment allows our Geelong and Warrnambool bases to harness the power of the marine ecosystem and explore solutions to some of the challenges such as climate change, food security. For example, our researchers are looking at blue carbon storage, the future of seaweed as a crop, and many, many, many other areas that contribute to that broad coastal well-being. What is clear to me after 2 months is that the interplay between our different and distinct locations is often complex, but we have great strength from that complexity. Deakin cannot succeed without being clear about what we want to achieve locally and distinctly in the Geelong region, in the state, nationally and globally. How do we then shape our purpose? For every university, the creation, dissemination and application of knowledge is that purpose. The challenge for Deakin is how do we do this in a way where we focus on regional and national need and we continue to focus down on the things that we can do really, really well. You can't escape the conversation about the rapid pace of 21st century change and the impact of new technologies. As a university, we're absolutely part of that through our research, innovation and application activities. But we need to make sure that it's more than that. We need to make sure that we deliver progress and not just change, and that new technological solutions add to the quality of life, not just to the complexity of life. We're now seeing progress take place where we can bring really great scientific and engineering researchers together with the humanities researchers who can think about the application of this. If we look at water technology, the use of water, a lot of the challenge is not technology, it's actual social science about how you bring those changes back in an acceptable way into communities. This isn't just theoretical, we're doing this in reality. There's a Deakin project in the Solomon Islands involving plastic pollution on one end and drinking water supply on the other. How do you bring the two together? Well, you bring a group of smart engineering students and they develop a model where you take the plastic bottles, grind them up, make it as a feedstock for an innovative 3D printer, and they print their pipes and water supply technology from that recycled plastic water. It's real. That type of innovation occurs where we find an idea or a need, we develop a solution that's feasible and affordable, and we find ways to put it into practice. But we can only go so far. If we're to put it into practice, we need partnership with government, with industry, and many, many others, and that's what we continue to seek to do. Our students come to Deakin because we're a great academic institution, but we're also a very practical institution that our students can see there is direct relevance of what they're doing for the future. They recognise that not only does this give them a sense of well-being while they're studying with us, but it gives them a great platform for their future careers, and for many of them those careers will be 7 or 8 in number, and will straddle a working life that goes from 21 to north of 70, which poses a number of challenges again for our institution. We need to make sure that as a university we remove barriers to education empowering those careers, not put more barriers in the way. The rapid growth of knowledge and technology means that education can no longer be thought of in that nice compartmentalised school, university career. Education straddles the whole lot. If we're going to thrive as a university and you're going to thrive as a region, we need to make sure that we're a really easy university to do business with. Our borders need to be permeable, we're not putting any barriers in the way, and it's easy for people to understand how we work. We're pretty good at it, but one of my reflections early on is that we could be better and we will aspire to be better. Our education needs to continue to be high quality, but increasingly it will need to be flexible and innovative. That traditional pathway of school, university, career is for almost everybody becoming historical. We're all jumping through multiple careers. I wouldn't have believed 20 years ago that I would have been standing here doing this role. I'd have been shut away in an operating theatre somewhere. This is a much better role. But we need to make sure that university is much more than it was traditionally seen as that 3-year finishing school for many of the students. It's part of a lifelong engagement with learning. We can only do that in partnership with TAFE, partnership with employers, partnership with government. We have to rethink our model of learning. Some of it will continue to be intensely campus-based, but only where that is the best way to achieve what we need to achieve. Since its inception, Deakin's been a pioneer in off-campus and online education, and we will continue to do that and continue to harness technology to make it affordable, accessible, and quality for as many as can benefit from what Deakin has to offer. Again, this is not just an aspiration, this is reality. One story. 2 years ago, a member of the Australian Air Force deployed in Afghanistan was studying at Deakin in his spare time, and he dialed in from Afghanistan into the robotics laboratory at Burwood and undertook classes in real time. It can be done, we are doing it. Education for education's sake is great, but what's more important is it delivers real and tangible outcomes for individuals and communities. And we need to focus on those outcomes, but a word of warning. If we simply look at very short-term mechanistic outcomes, such as what somebody's earning 6 months after they leave university, we are doing the student and the community a disservice. That's not to say we don't recognise the importance of that, but it's a lot richer than that simple, narrow, mechanistic interpretation. For our undergraduates, we're going to continue to refine, adapt, and improve to make sure that we meet their needs and the community needs. We will be asking, how do we better co-create our curricula with industry? And by industry, I mean anybody who engages with our graduates, so that our graduates are not just ready for their next job, but prepared for a lifetime of learning and change. For postgraduate students, we're wondering, what does study look like over the next decade? Is it a traditional course with core subjects and electives all undertaken at prescribed times? Probably still have a place, but I suspect in the main, it's going to be bespoke learning, undertaken when it's needed through short, specialised bursts of activity, stacking up into qualifications that meet flexible needs and in jobs that we don't yet know will exist. That's going to sit alongside new models such as crediting skills and experience through micro-credentials that help job seekers develop their own career and seek new careers. What about our people? Ultimately, they are the single most important resource that we have as a university and the single most important resource we have as a community. We're already a substantial civic anchor institution that has helped the transformation of this region socially, culturally, and economically. That must and will continue. We need to make sure that we respond to the flexing and changing needs of those communities in a responsible way that is sustainable. I've talked about education. What about our research? Deakin's transformation in its research capacity over the last 10 years has been remarkable. We are now probably the 10th performing university of 41 in the country. That is an amazing transformation, which is in no small respect due to the leadership of Deakin, but it's also due to the support and passion that many of you in this room have had for our university. We've developed capacity and capability across the university, and many of you will have seen the remarkable changes in the Future Economy Precinct at Warren Ponds. That is but the start. We need to make sure that continues to grow. We don't only support existing areas of expertise, but we look for new areas of expertise, areas where we as a university can have impact that makes a positive difference. We're still refining that strategy, but what are we going to be looking at in terms of those key impact areas that work for us and work for the region? Sustainable future economies work in terms of energy, advanced and new manufacturing, new materials, the challenge and opportunities afforded by AI and robotics, and particularly ethical AI. And how do we make sure that our business graduates are equipped to deal with that new economy? So the business and economics of that very changing economy. How do we contribute to sustainable quality communities? How do we develop culture and society? How do we make sure that we contribute to the design of both spaces and systems in a way that adds real value? How do we make sure that our expertise in ethics, law, social policy, security come together to make a positive difference? And how do we make sure that those health professionals, education professionals, social work professionals meet the needs of those communities? Health, key opportunity, key challenge. Every Western country with a developed health system is grappling with how do we meet the needs of a very significantly changing demographic in a sustainable way. We are part of that, we wish to continue to be part of that, and we will help shape a really high quality health system for this region over those next decade. And finally, our environment. We've got a lot of work that's focused on protecting and enhancing that environment, whether it's marine, broader ecosystems, water, or food and food security. The impact of that research is going to take many forms, but I will mention just two. We're really going to focus on knowledge transfer, how we work in an open, easy and flexible way to build partnerships with industries so that that research expertise can get out as quickly as possible in a way that makes real difference. And also we want to make sure that as a university we're able to influence policy, not just as advocates, but as honest brokers where people can come to Deakin and say, what does the data, the evidence really tell us at the moment? What are the strengths? What are the gaps? How do we provide that input in a meaningful way? We've got great expertise in doing that. We want to do more of it. All of this takes place within the context of a broader national higher education system. In 1957, the former PM Robert Menzies said Australia needed to become a more and more educated democracy if we are to raise spiritual, intellectual and material living standards. Not much has changed, and those are probably still the words we need to remember. That was a response to the Murray Report in 1957, which heralded the beginning of the modern Australian university system. We're working with the Commonwealth Government around changes in making sure that the changes they put in around growth funding, around performance funding, not only build quality and resilience in our higher education system, but reflect the needs not just of the nation, but of the states and regions. The changes that are being talked about at the moment are important because they're just the first stage, and we need to make sure that the next stage allows for future growth that meets our needs as well as the nation's needs. Any new system has to allow for localised and regional future school leaver growth. We know that Victoria is growing rapidly, and we know that this region, from Footscray round all the way around to the Bellarine, is growing faster than any other bit of Victoria. And if you look at that area, over the next decade, 58% of the total school leaver growth in Victoria will come from that narrow region. We need to be able to respond to that. A simple national measure of growth is not going to meet our needs. We need to make sure that the system reflects a lifetime approach to learning and not just that short, sharp 3-year undergraduate degree. We need to ensure that the system remains quality driven and that there are measures so that institutions like Deakin that perform at very high levels are recognised, rewarded and encouraged to continue to do that. We need to make sure that central planning is not too strong. Central workforce planning at the level of countries is not an exact science. In fact, it was probably put on the world stage to make astrologers look good. We need to make sure that there is regional flexibility around workforce planning so that we can adapt. And it needs to make sure that the unique and distinct contributions that individual universities make to their regions are reflected. I wrote about this in The Australian last week. We will continue to champion that, and I will need you as colleagues and partners to champion that, because a simple national set of measures is not going to deliver what we as a region need for our higher education and research future. Any model will continue to need to recognise that important social contract. We exist as a university in a privileged position. We're able to do things that many other public organisations can't do. But if we're going to continue to do that, we need the social licence to do that, and that doesn't come from the university, it comes from you, our communities, and we need to hear from you. There's still a lot of work to be done, but we're in a great position to continue to build on that. Before I conclude, there is one point I want to make, and I would be remiss in not making it. Over the last few weeks, there's been some very negative comments about the Australian university sector and international education. We're an extraordinarily successful sector globally, with a third-ranked country in the world for international education. Hundreds of thousands of students from around the world seek out an Australian education and a chance to experience a time living in this wonderful country. They return home not just with the benefits of the education, but also hopefully with a real fondness for this country. In my job, I've met many overseas leaders who were part of the original Colombo Plan, who will forever, because of that, hold this country close. Yes, we have to focus on quality in our international education, but please, let's stop undermining what is a great Australian success story. Our international students and their success are something to celebrate for the country and for this region. It's brought great richness to our campuses in Geelong. It's a success story, not a problem. I can't believe how lucky I am to be part of the Deakin journey at this point in time. We've got a lot planned. We've got a lot that we want to work with all of you around developing, and I think we can continue to make a real and material difference to this area. Yes, there are plenty of challenges, but the opportunities to make a tangible and real difference are hugely significant. As an institution, we're incredibly proud of what we've achieved, and we're acutely aware that we need to continue that trajectory of change and momentum. We can only do that if we're able to continue to recruit really skilled people, our students and our staff, by continuing to develop a really strong shared sense of purpose and making sure that Deakin remains, at least as part of the Warn Ponds and Waterfront campuses are concerned, distinctly Geelong, distinctly G21, serving your and our needs. We'll continue to work closely with you over the next few years, and particularly over the next year as we develop our next strategy. Thank you for this opportunity to meet with you all this morning.
Thank you, Ian. Well, now to formally introduce our next guest this morning, Commissioner Jill Gallagher AO, the Victorian Treaty Advancement Commissioner. I'd like to welcome to the stage the member for Geelong, Couzens MP.
I begin by acknowledging the original owners of the land, the Wadawurrung people, and pay my respects to ancestors past, present and future, and thank them for their care of our land and waterways. I also want to acknowledge all Aboriginal people here in the room today. So as a member for Geelong, as the ambassador for Closing the Gap and the mother of 3 Aboriginal children, I can't tell you how proud I am to be a part of a government that is committed to treaty in Victoria. This is history in the making. I think we should be all very proud as Victorians that the government has taken this opportunity to do what's right. And that's what it's about. It's about doing what's right and ensuring that Aboriginal people in Victoria, our First Nations people, have the opportunity to negotiate treaties, something they haven't been able to do in the past. I think it's important that we listen to what we hear today and walk out of here and think about how we can contribute to this history-making that we're about to, journey that we're about to go on. I think it's important that it's not only Aboriginal people, but it's also non-Aboriginal people that need to be part of this journey, and to educate yourself and to go out and talk to your community, see what you can do in your workplace to ensure that people have a good understanding of what treaty's about, but also the history of our First Nations people in this state. So it is an absolute pleasure for me to introduce Jill. Jill commenced as the Victorian Treaty Advancement Commissioner at the start of 2018. As a proud Gunditjmara woman, Jill is a highly respected Victorian Aboriginal leader who has dedicated her life to advocating for self-determination outcomes on behalf of the Victorian Aboriginal community. She has spent the past 20 years advancing Aboriginal health and wellbeing on behalf of the Victorian Aboriginal community-controlled health organisations, including 14 years as the CEO. Jill was recognised for her outstanding contribution to community when she was inducted into the Victorian Honour Roll of Women in 2009, awarded the Order of Australia in 2013, and inducted into the Victorian Aboriginal Honour Roll in 2015. Jill has also been advocating for the Victorian Aboriginal community as co-chair of the Aboriginal Treaty Working Group and has been closely involved in the Victorian journey to treaty. Can we please welcome the Honourable, Jill Gallagher, AO, Treaty Commissioner for Victoria. Thank you, Jill.
Thanks, Christine. I would like to acknowledge that we are on the lands of the Wadawurrung people, traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I wish to pay my respects to their elders and elders throughout Victoria, whose generations of struggles and commitment and dedication to advancing our communities throughout Victoria have brought us to where we are today. I'd like to acknowledge and thank Christine for her introduction, and I have no aspirations to becoming the Honourable, by the way. So the Premier can rest very well. But thanks for that, Christine. And thank you for your commitment and your dedication to advancing treaties here in Victoria. I'm a proud Gunditjmara woman from Western Victoria. My mother, this is my mother's country. My father's country is actually overseas from Ireland. I am Victoria's first Treaty Advancement Commissioner. I always enjoy my time, especially coming down to this part of the state of Victoria. The southwest is my mother's country, and I don't know, it reinvigorates when, as an Aboriginal person, you can go back to country. My mother's people actually comes from a little mission called Lake Conda Mission, which is just down near Hayward. And but she never lived on Lake Conda Mission. She actually lived at Warrnambool, the Framlingham Aboriginal Mission, and that's where my mum grew up. That part of the world has been, as we all will know, hopefully we will all know, that part of the world has been in the news recently. And we all heard of Budj Bim in far west Victoria. Budj Bim is a site, an area that has just been registered on the World Heritage List. At Budj Bim in far west Victoria, my people, we weren't just nomads, we were eel farmers. We developed systems of agriculture and baskets to sort eels by size, allowing time for the young ones to breed and grow, ensuring that we had a food source and harvest all year round. It meant a guaranteed food supply and a sophisticated network of trade. We traded eels with neighbours. We traded eels as far up as the New South Wales border and actually beyond. This system is at least 6,500 years old. But I am aware that they have done scans of the seabed and they have found evidence of eel races far out to sea. This means we were likely farming in much the same way before the oceans rose to their current levels. Last month, as earlier said, these sites received World Heritage listing. The first site in Australia to be listed exclusively for its Aboriginal cultural heritage values. That is something that we should all be very proud of. This is not only a huge victory for my people, but a victory for the broader southwest Victorian community, and offers much for all of us. It should also be a victory for Australia on an international platform. Sadly, but our culture has not always been celebrated in this country. And I want to take a little bit of a different turn in my speech to talk about something that is not so nice. In October 1839, Frederick Taylor and James Hamilton and a party of shepherds lined up along the top of a gully called Emu Creek in Western Victoria. It was dawn, and below them slept approximately 50 Aboriginal men, women and children. Taylor and his men were on horseback. They charged down the gully and immediately opened fire on the sleeping families. The best estimates that we can find are that only 12 people survived. 12 people survived that massacre. The reason Taylor massacred these families, sometime earlier, he suspected that 2 Aboriginal people had killed some sheep on a station that he managed. Somewhat remarkable, Taylor was actually tried for the massacre. Unremarkable, he was acquitted. In part due to the evidence given by Aboriginal witnesses not being considered admissible in a court of law. Over his lifetime, Taylor was implicated in a range of killings of Aboriginal people in Lake Bolac, the Bellarine, and across Gippsland. Despite this, he was never convicted and ended up being a well-respected Victorian. Taylor died with a sizable estate in Elstonwick, and he's buried in St Kilda with a tombstone that's taller than me. But I don't share these stories because it's easy or because I want you to feel guilty in any way, shape or form. I don't share it because I expect you to feel responsible also. I share each of these stories to offer an insight into the history that our people still carry with us. The intense pride in being the oldest continuous culture on earth. The pride at innovating and inventing thousands of years ahead of most cultures on this planet. But also intense trauma we carry. The burden of knowing what happened to our ancestors and the impacts that we as a community still feel today. And you can see it in the record. You can see it in the evidence. With the amount of our people in the overrepresented in the justice system, in our hospitals, on the streets, unemployed. Can you imagine a world where instead our culture is considered a source of strength and we all value these cultures? If we were taught about places like Budj Bim, I'm not sure how many of you in the room, but it is the oldest man-made structure on the planet that you've got in your backyard. If we were taught about places like Budj Bim, where you see our people and our culture in the landscape, in our language and in our politics, where schools learn about our achievements alongside learning about their pyramids and how old and ancient they are, and of course learning about the Great Walls of China, the Great Wall I should say, and the terracotta warriors. Wouldn't it be awesome if overseas people also, and people in Australia, learnt about the Budj Bims? That's what treaties can offer all of us, this strength and the renewal. Treaty is recognition that we are the first peoples of this country, and that you have in your own backyard or on your front door the oldest living, ancient and contemporary cultures on this planet. Treaty is a recognition that we, as Aboriginal people, we never ceded our sovereignty or willingly relinquished our rights to these lands or our place in this nation. Treaties are an opportunity to recast our relationship between Aboriginal Victorians and non-Aboriginal Victorians, and to recast our relationship with governments at all levels. Treaties can empower not just our communities, but all Victorians. And the possibilities are truly endless. And we must dream big in this space. My role is to take us one step closer to treaties by establishing the First Peoples Assembly of Victoria. This assembly will be our voice in the next stages of the treaty process, accountable to our communities. The assembly will be set up by December this year and is made up of 32 Victorian traditional owners, elected and appointed by our communities across the state. It will work with government to develop the groundwork for treaty or treaties. The groundwork for the treaty process, including what's on the table and who within our communities negotiate treaties. What's within state government's remit. It will work with governments to develop the treaty negotiating framework. Next month, for the first time in history, Aboriginal people 16 and over will head to the polls to vote for our representatives. We are holding our own elections to elect our best warriors and our best gatherers to be the next stage of the treaties process. 81 traditional owners have put their hands up to stand as candidates, and if elected, will lead discussions on behalf of all our communities across Victoria. And I believe this is exciting, exceptionally exciting. And we all should be excited about it, not just me or the Aboriginal community. Looking out across the room, I see leaders in government, industry, and in our community. You all have a critical role to play to support the treaty process and Aboriginal Victorians more broadly. Treaty isn't going to be the magic pill that solves all our problems. The consequences of colonisation, institutional racism, oppression, will take more than a generation to fix. We need to continue growing employment opportunities for our people, ensure better access to services, and demand better support from governments. I'd like you to ask yourself, what can you do right now before treaty? If you employ people, how can you support Aboriginal employment? If you offer services, are they designed in a way that is going to make a difference? For Aboriginal clients, are your staff properly trained to understand and address the issues that our communities face? Businesses and community-led initiatives and treaties fit hand in glove. We need to work together to move from managing poverty to managing wealth. And we, as Aboriginal peoples, we need your help in the treaty process as well. We need allies that stand with us and amplify our voices. If you have Aboriginal staff or clients, give them the space to participate in this process. Encourage them to enrol and to vote. Provide resources, share information, give the time needed in their work days. For every organisation here today, stand up and be counted. Say you support what we're doing. Show our community and everyone in this region that you will proudly stand alongside of this country's First Peoples. This process can seem new to a lot of us, and even to a lot of our Aboriginal communities. And it can seem very scary, which it is. And the challenges we face are immense. But nothing worth has ever come easy. We are on the cusp here in Victoria of something incredible. Something many of my community never thought we would ever see. Something that unfortunately our ancestors never saw. And I am so immensely proud that I'm Victorian and all we have achieved, and incredibly excited about what lays before us. Nationally, Victoria is leading the way in this space. International eyes are watching. We have the Northern Territory Government who've got treaties on the table. The Queensland Government have now put treaties on the table. So all eyes are watching what happens here in Victoria. And hand in hand, this is our chance to make history together. And I know we can do it. But before I close, I just wanted to make one final comment. And it's following on from what Christine said in her opening remarks. It takes a very strong, courageous and bold leader to put treaties on the table. And in Victoria we have done that. And I would like to thank the Premier, Daniel Andrews, for that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Jill. And I'm just not sure that we know that you're passionate about it. Just not sure. That was terrific. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a short break, and coming up after the break, we will indeed hear from the Premier, Daniel Andrews, and our guest speaker, Patricia Carvelis. So we'll break now for morning tea and be back in here at 11:10. Thank you.